Rex, I appreciate you so much speaking with us today. My first question is, what made you become mayor 14 years ago? What was going through your mind back then, if you can remember that?
Well, I had been involved in local politics forever, and it seemed like forever. And when the kids were when my youngest son was about 8, I told my wife I wanted to run for mayor. And she said, well, wait till the kids go to college. So the kids went to college. And then there were some changes in the local political structure that necessitated us running somebody with name ID, which I had. And so I signed up to run, and my wife was livid, because I didn't discuss it with her. And I said, but I did, 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, you said I wasn't being facetious. I thought it was okay. Apparently it wasn't. And I intended, it was 2-year terms at the time. We since changed it to 4. And I thought I'd be mayor for a few years, but it's going on 15 now.
Wow. You have one of the best law firms in Southern California. And explain to me your technique, your art of trial, your science of trial that gives you such success.
Well, that question has 2 questions.
Yes, it does.
Okay. One is the success of the law firm. The success of the law firm is, everything I do is based on cognitive science that I research. And, it's been my hobby for about 35 years. And what I try to do is I try to take scientific principles and move them to the courtroom. And that's the success in the courtroom. And I'm confident it's not me, it's people who know the skills. That's all it is. And the reason I know that is because the attorneys I've trained in the office, right out of the box, they're hitting 7-figure verdicts, which is unheard of, really is unheard of. So it's teachable, more importantly, it's learnable.
Yeah.
So the trial success doesn't, I mean, it's obvious to me what we do. And we also budget them appropriately. It's not uncommon to drop $1 million into a case. And that's what it takes, to get the right experts and they've made litigation so expensive, unnecessarily so, I mean, why do we have court reporters? Seriously. I mean, it's 2023. The computer actually types it for you, but because they have lobbyists, and so we're required to have them. The cost just goes way up. But why the firm is so successful is my wife runs all the business decisions. Like I don't even know the bank we're in. I don't. If anything were to happen in our relationship that would result in divorce, we have an agreement. We'd hire an accountant. We're not hiring a lawyer.
Right.
But because she does all that part of it, I was able to have the time to learn this stuff. We also, use cognitive science in our hiring. It's very hard to get a job here because of all the testing you have to go through. But once you do, we hold on to you. We're a good place to work. I'm proud of it, actually. And we have, basic rules. You don't badmouth another employee. You get one warning, and then my wife walks in with a box.
Oh.
Now, she hasn't had to do that in a really long time, but she used to do it. I also think women are better managers than men. That's because they have a thicker corpus callosum, the 2 sides of the brain communicating with each other. They manage on a flat plane. There's a lot of science behind it, a lot of anthropology behind it, as to how we evolved in that direction. I just stay within those principles.
Do you prefer to go to trial more often than actually settle?
Me?
Yes,
that's what I prefer to do, personally. Personally, I don't go to settlement conferences anymore. I just get in their way. I don't know, I enjoy the courtroom. It used to terrify me. For years, it terrified me. And then when I started figuring out how to just lower my heart rate, it became incredibly enjoyable.
That's excellent. Let's talk about your biotech companies, Catronics. Tell me about Catronics.
Catronics is the first one. And about 3-4 years ago, I guess 4 years ago now, I had a friend who called me up, asked to borrow some money because he wanted to invest in this, because he thought it was an orthopedist, and he thought they had a potential cure for arthritis. And so I lent him the money, and then I got interested myself, and before I knew it, I was millions of dollars in. But primarily because the science behind it is novel, it's innovative, and we've now taken it through dogs, and we're able to cure arthritis. There's no other way to say it. It works on a cellular level. All of our cells have what's called a GP130 receptor, and that signals interleukin-6, interleukin-11, and they're not quite sure how, but it influences stem cells, the production of stem cells. But what occurs as we age, we get more and more inflammation in our body, and that's the primary cause of aging is inflammation. This modulates that, brings it down to an acceptable level. When for the arthritis, when they inject it into the joint, what it does is it removes the inflammation, removes the fibrosis, and the stem cells take off. It was surprising, we found with the dog study also, is that it relieves pain. A sub-therapeutic dose relieves pain. We do that based upon how they walk, how they stand. There's biomarkers you use. But from that, but that is a drug that's not water soluble, which is what you want if you're putting it in a joint. They've now moved on, and we have water soluble drugs that we're starting to test this year. COVID put us way back, but we did a mouse study in Japan, and it seems to stop pulmonary fibrosis. It's in the mice, it stopped pulmonary fibrosis. We think it'll actually do a lot of reparative work or regenerative work. And what they've discovered is that this GP130 receptor was in animals that can regenerate limbs, salamanders. Mm-hmm. They don't have a GP130 receptor. We do. Animals above them, all the animal world has it, except for the ones that can regenerate limbs. And the prevailing theory now is that what occurred as we evolved, most of us died from infections. A little scratch, you get infected. So what the body does is it causes inflammation to take off, fibrosis, which is scarring, to cover the wounds so you don't get infected. Well, now we don't really need that. It's more of an aging problem. 45% of all death is fibrotic, meaning if you have kidney disease, it's because your kidneys are scarred up with scar tissue, which is fibrosis. Liver disease, heart disease, all of those things are fibrotic. We can stop that. And by stopping that, what occurs is the stem cells proliferate and you regenerate. And so far it's bearing fruit in the animal world. Human trials start this year on the arthritis drug. We've had some interest from the government that they want to fund us and they want to fast track it through the FDA, because what's occurring is our health system is fracturing. We don't have enough nurses, we don't have enough doctors, the cost is through the roof. So there's going to be a big push on preventative medicine rather than, fixing it after it's broke. I think it's going to work.
I like it. Let's take this to fitness, is what I'm feeling right now. You look incredible. You look fit. You know a lot about medicine, health, sounds like. Mm-hmm. So what's your process on looking the way you do and staying like anti-aging the way you are?
Well, I take a lot of anti-aging substances. I'm 71, but I'm pretty out there on it. There's a certain risk level of what I do.
Well, let's talk about this risk. What risk? Do you ride bikes? Do you?
No. The medication.
Medication risk. Oh, okay.
They're not fully tested yet. But I also work out every day. I will be late rather than miss a workout. I just do it religiously now. I used to be 306 pounds.
Whoa.
So, I've seen both ends of the spectrum. The problem is because of that weight, I don't have any knees left. My shoulders are gone. And, so I have to work around the arthritic injuries. I'll be patient zero when we start injecting this.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Marvel movie almost.
Almost. Yeah. Yeah. And the other reason I put so much money into it is my wife has a progressive lung disease, and I think we're going to be able to stop the progression. I'll know in a year.
Wow. From doing research about you, very impressed with all the things that you've done. You have a high school as well, continuation high school. Tell me why did you start that, and tell me about it.
No, I didn't start that. What happened was, at the time, I was putting a lot of energy into the high schools, and I was the primary funder of 2 of the bond issues, and the board just named it after me.
Oh, okay.
They offered me a full-blown high school. This is an alternative high school, and I thought that would be inappropriate. I mean,
Wow.
Probably ought to save those for dead people. But by putting my name on the alternative high school, I thought it would actually improve their budget and improve the way the district responded to those kids. Mm-hmm. I used to teach them in mock trial, and quite frankly, there were some of those kids, if I was in trouble, I'd want them to defend me more than the lawyers I know.
Wow. Your other company, play on words, Parris.
Parris. Yeah.
Parris. Okay, I'm sorry, Parris. Yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, we just licensed the peptides that we create. I work with the scientists at USC that they created in the labs. They created it with our funding. And so USC has licensed it to us, and they're also buying into the company. That's just getting off the ground, but we're primarily going to focus on animals initially, because we want to get around the FDA to see just how well it works. Right? And then we'll submit what's called a IND, investigation of new drug, and start a clinical trial.
So how do you have time to do all this stuff?
I mean, how does Biden have time to run the world?
Yeah, but he's not also going to trial. He doesn't, he's not all the things that you are.
Sometimes it's problematic because of conflicts, moving the calendar around. And, I do a lot of things out of country for the city, to bring factories to the city is the goal. So that's problematic. It's just time is the problem. But I have exceptionally good people working with me. In fact, I have some disabilities that require me to have people working with me. Okay. But as long as you keep your staff smart, innovative, proactive, you're there. Mm-hmm. You got to treat them very well. You got to pay them well. But anything I can delegate, I delegate.
How do you think your wife would describe you?
It depends on
on the day.
On that day. I know how she would describe me, but you have to understand she's describing the brand. I mean, we've talked for 30 years. She's always reminding me that I am not the brand.
Right.
Sometimes I get a big head about it. But I would hope she would describe me as kind and generous, and I think I'm those things. And there's a ferocity to me that, is problematic at times.
All right. I'm going to ask you the one question I ask every big celebrity or every big person I've ever talked to is, what are these couple moments in your life that got you to where you are right now? What are these little life-changing moments or decisions you made that got you where you are now?
Well, I dropped out of high school, and I got into a little bit of trouble, and I got sentenced to jail. Now, it was a really small town then, and my mother was a waitress, and she knew the judge. And she went to his house and talked to him. And I didn't have to actually go behind bars. I had to do, seemed like a lifetime of community service. Mm-hmm. But that experience, I mean, there's no terror like standing in front of a judge before he sentences you. I mean, your knees are shaking. It's absolute mind-numbing terror. And I decided then I was not going to be on that side of the system again. And I enrolled at AB College and, then went to UC Santa Barbara and then to law school. Now to fund that, I had to start a business. We started a bar, essentially. It was a restaurant, but essentially a bar. And that's what funded me to get through it.
Wow. In the hiring process at Parris, are you part of the hiring process every time?
No. In fact, they don't let me be part of the hiring process because I always say yes. I mean, I can't sit in a room with you for 30 minutes and not like you. And that's just...
Same.
I think 99% of the people are all pretty much the same, and they're interesting, and I always say yes. So they don't even get to see me, until they're hired. When they do this show of it being me that hires them, the lawyers. Mm-hmm. It's not.
Right.
It's just keep my ego satisfied, I think.
Let's talk about the lectures you do. You just finished. I just missed you having your lectures. Tell me how it happens, how you promote it, and what you talk about, and how they're sold out, etc. Just tell me about your lectures.
Well, it's for trial lawyers. It takes the last 30 years of studying cognitive science. It's easier to study it now because of the internet. But it used to, I used to go to libraries and get books and study cognitive science. And I teach it to lawyers, how to persuade juries. A lot of it is just how to deal with their own insecurities and their own fears. There's a really good scientific basis for why people have stage fright. And it's because as we evolved and we lived on the savannas, if the chief decided you were an embarrassment to the tribe and banished you, you died. Nobody lived. You either froze to death, the animals ate you, the tribe a mile away killed you. You died. So your genes didn't pass on. We evolved to fear social rejection above all else. Now, think about it, what an attorney does. There's 12 representatives, which was the size of a normal tribe, Mm-hmm. You got the chief up there in his black robe, and one of you are going to be banished,
right.
Inevitably.
Right.
So, knowing that, and that's based on real good science too, is what's fear? Fear is something that's going to happen in the future. So you got to bring yourself to the present, and there's a technique to do that, and then you lower your heart rate. Have you ever been afraid without a rapid heartbeat? It's impossible. Mm-mm. All you got to do is block that adrenaline, lower that heart rate, and now you're probably the most powerful person in the room because the other guy is still dealing with his fears, And we teach techniques on just how to organize your notes. We use mind mapping, which is in a circular pattern rather than linear. We spend a lot of money preparing witnesses. But it's all, the amount of money made in trials that exchanges hands is astronomical. And so we treat it, we respect it for what it is, and we put all of our energies into it. We never go in alone. I think your question was, why do I teach it? Or?
Yeah, it was about your lecture. No, but you're actually explaining this whole process of how the lecture is. I get it.
And, there's just so many misconceptions that lawyers are under, that trial lawyers have. And basically what I do is just knock those down, I think. A lot of it is that.
Yeah.
But also a lot of it is the hand gestures you use, the metaphor. You really have to be an expert at metaphors, and you have to be able to reverse those metaphors when the other side uses them. It's 30 years.
Yeah.
One step at a time.
Yeah. It's been so great talking to you, Rex. You're, I'd hate to be against you in trial.